Hi all, this is a lesson on section 1.2 Elasticity, focusing on XED, YED and PES. Again, we'll be going through the basics here before we delve a bit deeper in class. First, cross-price elasticity. Cross-price elasticity is the measure of the responsiveness of demand of a good to the change in price of another good. Again, we need to know the definition, so make sure you learn these. And again, we've got an equation that we need to know. Here it is. Percentage change in demand of good X divided by the percentage change in price of good Y. We'll go through an example. The price of bikes has increased by 20%, causing the quantity demanded of bike helmets to decrease by 40%. Pause now and work out the cross-price elasticity of bikes and bike helmets. Okay, negative 40 divided by 20 is negative 2. Good. What does this tell us? Bikes and bike helmets are close complements. Now, for XED, the sign of the coefficient does matter. It tells us whether the goods are complements or substitutes. Logically, if the price of a substitute increases, demand for the product will increase, and vice versa, always leaving a positive value for a substitute. The value tells us how close the relationship is. A low positive or negative number tells us there is a somewhat remote relationship, whereas a high positive or negative number tells us it is much closer. It's just logic. Coffees at two cafes right next to each other are likely to be close substitutes. If the price of coffee at Cafe A increases by 10%, it could well lead to a 20% increase in demand at Cafe B, leading to a high value, close substitutes. We'll go through a number of examples of this in class, but I think this spectrum down the bottom here will help you get an understanding of how these work. Income elasticity of demand is a measure of the responsiveness of demand to a change in income. Let's say incomes increase by 20%. This might have the effect of decreasing demand for international roast instant coffee, which is what my parents drank when I was a kid, by 10%. By plugging in the values, we see that YED equals negative 0.5. This shows us that it's an inferior good, but of course, you should have known that anyway from our work in the last section. Again, the sign matters for YED. A negative value indicates an inferior good. For example, regular beef mince. A positive value indicates a normal good, such as a new car. Now, it's important to remember here that these classifications vary by demographic. Poorer people who get an increase in income will buy more Mazda 3s, whereas those who are already significantly wealthy will buy fewer, shifting their demand to a more luxurious car. Here we also introduce two new classifications of goods. Necessity goods will have income inelastic demand. Demand will be relatively non-responsive to a change in income. Think about it. If your income doubles, how much more toilet paper are you really going to need? You're not going to buy that much more. It's a necessity. So it doesn't matter too much what your income is. You're going to be buying a certain amount of toilet paper. Luxury goods are highly income elastic. A small increase in income can drastically change our demand for things like overseas holidays and high-end watches. And when our income decreases, these will be the first things that we will cut, as they are largely unnecessary. We'll look at some of the implications of YED in class. Price elasticity of supply is a measure of the responsiveness of quantity supplied to a change in price. Now, we're familiar with the law of supply that states that if price increases, quantity supplied increases. But by how much will it increase? And by how much will it decrease if price falls? Let's take Christmas trees as an example. One year, due to extra demand, the price increases by 30%. Quantity supplied may increase by 2%. Pause now and calculate the PES of Christmas trees. Okay, 2/30 is 0.07, and we follow the same rules as PED, where a value less than 1 is inelastic. Why would supply be so unresponsive? Shouldn't the farmers want to sell more to make some juicy profits? We'll see why it might be when we look at the determinants of PES. Firstly, how much do costs rise as quantity supplied increases? If you're running a car factory and the price increases, what would factor into your decision about increasing production? If you're at capacity, you would have to build a new factory, so it would require a significant increase in price to make it worth it. If you're not at capacity, it's a relatively simple equation. Just start making more. One thing that factories might do is start a night shift to make the best use of their capital. So the higher cost of increasing the supply, the less they're likely to respond to a change in price. Now, just like PED, the time period considered matters. Let's take Glenunga for an example. We have a huge demand for student places. In the short term, we couldn't increase the number of students we educate, our supply, even if price increased significantly. Supply is inelastic. We just don't have the room to have more students. We've got legislated limits on average class sizes in a high school. We can't take them in. Supply is inelastic. In the long term, we can do things like build new buildings, making our supply more elastic to price. But that's a long-term thing. In fact, what the state government is doing right now is responding to inner city demand for public high schools by building the new Botanic High School on Frome Road. The ability to store stocks determines PES. Some goods can be stored easily, for example, televisions, and can be released as needed, whereas goods like milk and services like labour need to be provided on demand, rendering them more inelastic. Production time is also crucial to PES. Goods with a short production time, like DVDs, can be produced rapidly in response to an increase in price, making them responsive or elastic to a change in price. Goods with a longer production time can't respond to a price increase. You can't just grow another ton of apples in a week if the price is higher. There's a long lead-in time. You need to get more land. The trees have to grow. The apples have to grow. You can see how this is very related to the time period considered. A sustained increase in the price of wool will lead to a greater investment in sheep grazing, and in the long run, supply can respond to the increase in price. And of course, this is why the supply of Christmas trees is inelastic. You can't just spirit into existence more Christmas trees. You've got a certain number of Christmas trees on your farm. If the price goes up, it's hard to really take advantage and sell more and more Christmas trees because you don't have them. They take time to grow. Okay, so that's XED, YED, and PES, the basics. We'll go deeper in class. For now, though, I want you to test yourself and try to write down the 4 equations for PED, XED, YED, and PES. So pause now and do that. Okay, here they are. Now frequently students will get these wrong. They'll put the price on top of the PED equation, quite often. One way to remember is that the first letter of each shortening here is what goes on the bottom. So price, price, cross price, cross price, income, income, price, price. First letter is always on the bottom of the equation. Okay, that's it for this class, and that's it for my day at school as well. Okay,